Have you ever felt like you're carrying an unbearable weight on your shoulders? Anxiety takes over, and the fear of the future steals your peace. The truth is, many of us live trapped in worry, trying to control everything as if our destiny depended solely on us. But what if I told you there's a better way? The Bible teaches us that God has a plan, and trusting Him is the key to experiencing true peace. Philippians 4:7 speaks of a peace that surpasses all understanding, and it is available to you. In this video, we'll explore how prayer, surrendering to God, and the faith-filled examples of people like Jehoshaphat and Jesus can transform your life. Are you ready to let go of that burden and find rest in God? Anxiety can be a crushing weight, silent, invisible, yet incredibly real. Many people carry this burden alone, believing they must always be strong. But the truth is, God never intended for us to fight these battles on our own. He invites us to surrender our worries to Him because He knows we were never meant to carry everything by ourselves. The problem is that we often hold on to these burdens tightly, thinking that letting go means weakness. But faith teaches us the opposite. Surrendering to God is not giving up, it's trusting. Jesus said in Matthew 11:28, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." He didn't call us to struggle alone. He called us to find relief in Him. There was a time when I felt completely overwhelmed. Life's pressures were closing in from every direction: work, family, expectations, and fears about the future. It felt like I was drowning in a sea of worries, trying to swim against an unstoppable current. Anxiety would take over my nights, and my heart would race for no apparent reason. No matter how much I tried, it never seemed to be enough. It was in that moment of desperation that I realized I needed to stop fighting alone. In prayer, I confessed my weakness to God and asked for help. Little by little, I began to understand that my role was not to control everything, but to trust. God never intended for us to carry a weight we weren't built to bear. When we surrender our anxieties to Him, we find a peace our hearts are longing for. Prayer is more than just words spoken into the air. It's an intimate conversation with God, a safe place where we can lay down our worries. When we take time to pray, our focus shifts from the circumstances that overwhelm us to the one who can change them. Anxiety screams that we are alone and without solutions. But prayer reminds us that God is in control and invites us to trust Him. So often, we want immediate answers, but God works in His own time. Philippians 4:67 teaches us to present our worries with gratitude because the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard our hearts and minds. Prayer doesn't just change situations, it changes us from the inside out, strengthening our faith and bringing emotional healing. The more we seek God, the more we learn to rest in Him. The Bible is filled with stories of people who faced fear and uncertainty but chose to trust God. One powerful example is King Jehoshaphat of Judah. Faced with a massive enemy army, he didn't panic or try to handle things on his own. Instead, he sought God in prayer and declared his total dependence on Him. God responded with an unexpected strategy. Instead of fighting, the people were to praise Him. The result? Victory came without them lifting a single sword. This story teaches us that anxiety can be defeated when we trade fear for trust. God never promised us a life without challenges, but He guarantees His presence through them. Just as Jehoshaphat surrendered the battle to God and found peace, we can do the same. When we trust in God, our worry turns into rest, and our struggles become His battles. We live in a world that never stops. Social media, alarming news, constant pressure, all of this contributes to a state of continuous restlessness. With every scroll on our phones, we're bombarded with comparisons, unrealistic expectations, and a sense of urgency that steals our peace. The problem is that when we get caught up in this, we let anxiety dictate our emotions instead of trusting in God's plan. But Philippians 4:7 reminds us of a powerful truth: the peace of God surpasses all understanding, and guards our hearts. This peace doesn't come from what we see or control, it comes from trusting Him. When we filter what we consume and focus more on prayer and faith than on external pressures, we begin to experience real rest. The world may feed anxiety, but God invites us to a peace that isn't dependent on circumstances. Even Jesus, the very Son of God, faced deep anguish, so why do we think we'll never experience it? In Gethsemane, just before the cross, Jesus felt such intense distress that he sweated drops of blood. He knew what was coming, but instead of letting fear consume him, he prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done," Luke 22:42. This total surrender teaches us that trust in God is greater than any anxiety. Jesus didn't deny his pain or pretend he wasn't struggling. He took his burden to the Father and found strength in prayer. Too often, we try to fix everything ourselves, but true relief comes when we surrender our worries to God, just as Jesus did. He showed us that peace doesn't mean the absence of struggles. It means the certainty that God is in control, even in the hardest moments. The biggest mistake we make in dealing with anxiety is trying to control everything. We want instant answers, quick fixes, and guarantees about the future. But God invites us to do the opposite: let go and trust. When we surrender our worries to Him, we're not giving up, we're choosing to rest in His wisdom. True peace comes when we realize we don't have all the answers, but we trust the one who does. Think of a child in their father's arms. They don't need to understand everything to feel safe. In the same way, God calls us to surrender our fears and trust in His care. Proverbs 356 teaches us not to rely on our own understanding, but to acknowledge God in all our ways. Anxiety ties us to what we can't control, but surrender frees us to live in the peace that only He can give. When anxiety strikes, our natural tendency is to look for logical solutions or drown in worry. But the Bible shows us a different approach. Worship. Jehoshaphat and his army faced an impossible battle by singing and praising God. And that's exactly what brought the victory. 2 Chronicles 2:02122. Worship shifts our focus from fear to faith, reminding us that God is bigger than any problem. Worship isn't just a religious act, it's a powerful spiritual weapon. It changes the atmosphere, calms the heart, and connects us to God's presence. When we worship in the middle of the storm, we declare that we trust the Lord no matter what. So next time anxiety tries to take over, try lifting up a song of praise. It may seem simple, but the power it releases is life-changing. Anxiety may seem like an unbeatable giant, but you don't have to face it alone. God has already given us the tools to overcome life's pressure. Prayer, surrender, worship, and faith in Him. The peace you're longing for isn't found in circumstances, but in the certainty that God is in control. So what will you do with this? Will you keep carrying the weight alone, or will you surrender it to God? Choose to trust, choose to rest, choose to live by faith. If this message spoke to your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a video. May God bless your journey.